Have you ever felt like you're in a season of silence where no one's calling, no one's watching, and no one seems to notice you at all? What if I told you, that's not a sign something's gone wrong, it's a sign that something sacred is being built? People often misunderstand what it really means to be alone. They equate solitude with suffering. They assume that if no one is standing next to you, cheering for you, texting you, validating your presence, something must be broken inside of you. But what if that stillness, that loneliness you're feeling, isn't a sign of failure, but a season of divine preparation? Some of the most transformative, powerful, soul-defining chapters in your life won't be the ones filled with applause or surrounded by people. They'll be the ones where you walk alone, not because you're forgotten, not because you're unwanted, but because you're being called out. Because God is pulling you apart, not to isolate you, but to prepare you for something greater. And in order to do that, sometimes He has to strip away what you've been leaning on. He has to remove the noise. He has to take you away from the crowd, away from distractions, away from dependence. Because being alone, truly alone, isn't a punishment. It's a process. Think about the world we live in. We're taught that the more friends you have, the more followers likes. Heart's applause, the more valuable you must be. We're led to believe that attention equals worth, that the spotlight is where success lives. But heaven doesn't measure value the way the world does. In fact, some of your most important breakthroughs, your deepest healing, your clearest direction, your most profound encounters with purpose, won't come when you're surrounded. They'll come when you're hidden, when no one else knows your name but God. Need proof. Before Jesus stepped into His destiny, He didn't start with crowds. He went into the wilderness, alone. Before David wore a crown, he wasn't at a royal banquet. He was in the fields watching sheep, alone. Before Joseph ruled over Egypt, he wasn't praised, he was imprisoned, forgotten, alone. And yet in those unseen places, those quiet, tucked-away corners of life, something divine was unfolding. Their character was being formed. Their humility was being tested. Their faith was being forged in fire. Their identities weren't coming from people's opinions. They were being rooted in something stronger, in God's presence and purpose. We often beg God for the stage, for the spotlight. We say, "Use me, elevate me, send me." But sometimes God answers by hiding us, not to delay our purpose, but to develop it. Because it's in that sacred hiding place where distractions fade and clarity begins, where the world's voices go silent and God's whisper grows louder. In the quiet, He removes the pressure to perform. He strips away the need to impress. He breaks the illusion that you need other people's validation to be whole. And in that stillness, in that divine isolation, He builds you. He teaches you to stand not on applause, but on assignment. Not on claps, but on calling. And the truth is, when you're alone, you're not alone. God is closer than your next breath. He walks with you in the silence. He speaks when the world stops speaking. And when you begin to hear His voice louder than theirs, when His presence becomes your anchor, you realize something powerful. There is nothing more secure than knowing who you are without needing anyone else to remind you. You stop seeking approval. You stop needing the crowd. You stop chasing temporary connections to numb the ache. Because now you're rooted in the One who made you. There's a reason a seed is buried in the dark before it ever sees the sun. It has to break. It has to push through resistance. It has to take root before it can bear fruit. So if you're in a season of solitude, don't rush it. Don't resent it. Reverence it. Because in this hidden place, something holy is happening. And when the time is right, what's been growing in the dark will bloom in the light. What blooms too early often can't survive. And what rises before it's rooted will always fall. That's the danger of rushing the process. We live in a world obsessed with fruit, with outcomes, with applause and platforms. We want visibility status and success. We pray for big stages and open doors, asking for harvest, but often we haven't let ourselves go through the necessary season of rooting. We want the mountaintop moment without climbing the mountain. But here's the truth. No one likes to talk about. God loves you too much to promote you before you're ready. He won't let you stand in a place your character can't support. He knows what's ahead requires a strength you haven't built yet. And so he says, not yet. Not now. But trust me, I'm working. So don't rush your season of solitude. Don't wish it away. Don't despise the days when it's just you and your thoughts, your faith, your fears. Because that quiet space where no one's clapping, where no one's watching, that's where the real transformation happens. That's where you're formed. That's where your strength is forged. You see, it's easy to feel worthy when people are cheering. When your name's being spoken, when the room applauds, when the world says you matter. But what about when the crowd is gone? When no one sees you? When the phone stops buzzing? Can you still believe in your value? You don't need 100 hands clapping to know you matter. You don't need flashing lights or constant affirmation. Sometimes all you need is one whisper from heaven. One quiet, sacred word that says, I'm with you. And let me tell you, when God is with you, it doesn't matter who isn't. When you are held in His hands, the ones that let go don't define your journey anymore. He's not growing you in public for applause. He's building you in private for purpose. He's not hiding you because you're unworthy. He's setting you apart because you're chosen. And if you'll stay faithful in this hidden place, in the quiet, the lonely, the seemingly invisible moments, you will come out of it stronger, wiser, and deeply prepared for what's coming. Some of your most sacred victories won't happen in front of an audience. They'll happen behind closed doors. Not when the world is watching, but when the world has gone quiet. Because solitude isn't a prison. It's a preparation ground. You know there's something powerful that begins to happen when the noise fades, when the conversations stop, when the text messages go unanswered, when the people you used to lean on start to disappear. At first it feels like loss. It feels like silence. It feels like you've been left alone in a dark room with nothing but your own thoughts. And for many that's terrifying. Because that voice, the small trembling one inside of you, it's the voice you've been avoiding for years. But maybe, just maybe, this season isn't about what you lost. Maybe it's about what you're finally finding. Maybe it's not about who left. Maybe it's about who you're becoming. Because when the world quiets down, when the external chaos falls away, that's when the real conversations begin. Not the ones you have with others. The ones you finally have with yourself. The ones where you ask questions like, who am I really? What do I believe? What do I need to heal from? What am I holding on to that I was never meant to carry? For too long, many of us have let others answer those questions for us. We've allowed voices that don't even know us to shape our lives. We've molded ourselves into the expectations of others, trying to fit into molds we were never designed for. We've performed. We've pretended. We've dressed ourselves in opinions that didn't fit. We've spoken in tones that never sounded like truth. We've chased dreams that weren't even ours to begin with, all because we were afraid to sit in stillness and face the voice within. But when you're truly alone, when it's just you, the silence and God, you begin to feel a shift. You start to notice the difference between what you were told to be and who you were created to be. You begin to unlearn. You begin to shed layers of performance. You stop dancing to rhythms that aren't yours. You stop echoing voices that never belonged to your truth. And for the first time, maybe in a long time, you start hearing something sacred, your own voice rising to the surface. Not the conditioned one, the called one. That's what solitude makes possible. Not loneliness, but alignment. Not isolation, but revelation. That voice you've been avoiding, the one you've drowned in busyness, buried beneath the weight of comparison, silenced by shame, it's not weak. It's just been muffled, covered by years of doubt, disappointment, distraction. But now in the stillness, without the noise of the world pressing in, that voice is slowly coming back to life. And something shifts. You begin to realize it was never really lost. Your voice didn't disappear. It didn't vanish. It was simply crowded out, pushed down by the roar of other people's expectations, hidden beneath the pressure to perform, silenced by the fear of not being enough. But here you are now, standing in the quiet, no longer surrounded by the noise, and what do you hear? You hear truth. You hear clarity. You hear depth, calling, conviction. That is your voice. This is the season where God gently leads you back to it. The season where He teaches you to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop giving people the power to define you, to validate you, to determine your value. No more begging to be seen. No more pleading for people to clap. He's bringing you back to that sacred place where your own soul becomes your sanctuary. Because when you start speaking from that place, not to impress others, but to remind yourself, healing begins. Real, lasting change begins. Power begins. You've got to start talking to yourself like someone who's going somewhere. You've got to speak with the kind of faith that sees beyond your current circumstance. Speak to yourself like someone who carries destiny. Someone who has been handpicked by heaven for something greater. Stop rehearsing the lies others told you. Stop echoing the voices that only planted fear. Stop letting their doubts live rent-free in your mind as if they were gospel. Ask yourself, what did God say? What did you hear in the quiet moments when everything else fell away? Because that voice, the one you hear in stillness, the one that rises when you finally get honest with yourself, that's the voice you follow. That's the one that leads you forward. Let me tell you, no one can affirm your identity like the Holy Spirit can. No one can confirm your calling like heaven can. When that voice rises up from within you, everything begins to shift. You walk differently. You carry yourself with quiet authority. You stop making decisions out of fear and start choosing from a place of peace. You begin to say no to the temptations that once distracted you. And you say yes, yes to the assignment that used to terrify you. Not because someone told you to, but because you heard it yourself. You believed it. You received it. And once you find your voice, your real voice, not the one shaped by other people's expectations, but the one rooted in purpose and truth, you stop forcing yourself into rooms you were never meant to be in. You stop shrinking to make others feel comfortable. You stop letting insecurity define you, because that voice will remind you you carry something powerful. You are chosen. You are worthy. Even if no one claps, you are still called. Even if no one stays, you are still enough. Even if the world goes quiet, your voice still speaks truth. Previously, we talked about finding your voice, the one buried beneath years of noise and expectations. Now let's explore what happens when you stay in that silence and truly begin to listen. Even when a door closes, that isn't the end of the story. It might feel like rejection in the moment, but sometimes a closed door is simply divine redirection. And even then, God is already preparing another way, a better way, a way that requires a version of you that's still being formed. Your voice, the one that's beginning to rise in the quiet, reminds you you're not being forgotten. You're being refined. You're not being overlooked. You're being positioned. Because there's clarity in solitude. Clarity you won't find in a crowd. There's strength in stillness, the kind that can't be shaken by surface-level storms. And yes, there is revelation in the silence. but only if you dare to stay in it. Don't waste the quiet. Don't rush through it. Don't try to fill it with noise or distractions just to avoid the sound of your own soul. Because it's here, right here, where your confidence starts to grow, where your courage is born, where your future truly begins. Something powerful happens when you start listening to that inner voice, the one that's always known the way forward. Not because it was loud, but because you finally got quiet enough to hear it. That voice, that's your breakthrough. When the noise fades, when the calls stop coming, when the inbox stays empty, and all that remains is you and your thoughts, you and your silence. Something remarkable happens. You begin to hear, really hear. Not the voices of the world, not the opinions of others, but your own. For so long you've been conditioned to follow external voices, to seek validation, approval, and belonging in spaces that were never meant to define you. You've shaped yourself to fit molds you didn't create. You've measured your worth against standards that never honored your soul. But, in the solitude, in the quiet stillness, something deeper begins to rise. A truth that's been waiting patiently beneath all the pressure. You start to realize the voice you thought was yours wasn't yours at all. It was the world's. It was fears. It was the echo of expectations that never aligned with your purpose. And beneath all of that noise, hidden but steady, is the voice you've been ignoring. The voice that's actually yours. The one God placed in you long before the world had anything to say about you. This moment of silence isn't just about self-talk. It's about sacred listening. It's about turning down the volume of everything around you so you can turn up the frequency of what matters. And in that sacred space, you remember what's been true all along. You were never meant to be a reflection of the world's demands. You were meant to be a reflection of God's design. When you stop trying to measure up to the endless expectations and start tuning into your inner compass, you finally discover who you've been all along. The voice inside you. It's not weak. It's not naive. It's not insignificant. It's the strongest voice you'll ever hear. Because it knows your capacity even when you feel unsure. It remembers your calling even when you've forgotten. It carries the echoes of heaven's truth even when the world has tried to silence it. This is the voice that will lead you through uncertainty. This is the voice that will pull you out of the darkest nights and into the light of new beginnings. It's the voice of alignment, of purpose, of peace. And when you begin to trust it, really trust it, you begin to move differently. You stop settling. You stop chasing approval. You stop second-guessing your identity. In a world so full of noise, we often forget just how sacred one quiet moment can be. But here's the truth. God often speaks the loudest in silence. Not through chaos, not through crowds, but through stillness. It's in the stillness, the sacred pause between distractions, where we become most open to the whispers of heaven. Not in the chaos, not in the rush, but in the calm. When everything else fades and our hearts become still, that's when we begin to hear clearly. And as we lean in, as we let the silence speak, we realize something both beautiful and confronting. The voice we've been seeking out there, in other people, in validation, in approval, has been within us the entire time. It's God's voice, gentle, steady, unmistakable. And it's your voice, your true voice, finally aligned with His purpose for your life. But for years, that voice has been pushed aside. Not because it wasn't loud enough, but because you were too busy, too distracted, too caught up in performing, too afraid of rejection, too consumed by the fear of not being enough. So you silenced it. You buried it beneath the noise of everyone else's expectations. You chose applause over authenticity. But now, in the stillness, that voice is rising again. And for the first time in a long time, you're listening. And here's what you begin to understand. No one knows you like you know you. No one hears your thoughts, your prayers, your dreams, and your doubts the way you do. And no one can speak to your destiny the way the one who created you can. So let me ask you, what have you been telling yourself? What inner dialogue have you been rehearsing? What stories have you been silently subscribing to? For so long you've been consumed by noise, the opinions of others, the unrealistic expectations, the criticism that was never about you but about their own insecurities, the pressure to measure up to something that was never yours to begin with. But here's the truth that breaks chains. You've been living according to someone else's script. You've been letting others define you, telling you who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve. And with every nod of agreement, every time you second-guessed your own worth, you handed over your power. But not anymore. The moment you start listening to your own voice, your soul, your truth, your divine calling, you begin to rewrite your story. You begin to peel away the lies you've been told, the labels you've accepted, the limitations you've internalized. And that's where real change begins. Because when you start truly listening to yourself, not your fear, but your faith, you begin to speak differently. You speak with authority. You no longer tiptoe around your truth. You walk in it. You speak life over your pain. You speak purpose into your confusion. You speak courage into your own fears. And with every word, you get stronger. You stop waiting for the world to hand you a microphone. You reach for it yourself. Because now you know. You know your value. You know your voice carries weight. You know your words matter. And you're done waiting for permission to rise. You don't need someone else to announce your arrival. You don't need to be chosen by the crowd when you've already been chosen by the Creator. You don't need applause when you've been anointed. It's a powerful thing, truly powerful, when you realize the voice you've spent years avoiding is the very one that carries your destiny, the very one that leads you out of hiding, out of shame, out of doubt, and into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. It's the voice of your true self. The world has tried to shape you, to mold you, to silence you. It's told you to be quieter, smaller, easier to accept. But now you get to choose. You can choose to reclaim your voice. You can choose to follow the one that aligns with God's vision for your life. You can choose truth over performance. You can choose to stop dimming your light just to fit in and start shining it to lead the way for others. This is your moment. The moment where you stop echoing everyone else and start becoming your truest, boldest, most God-aligned self. So don't be afraid of the silence. Don't rush through it. Don't run from the moments when it's just you and your thoughts echoing back to you in the stillness of your soul. Embrace them, because in those moments, those raw, unfiltered pauses, you are closer to your truth than you've ever been. Your voice isn't weak, it isn't small, and it's definitely not insignificant. In fact, your voice is the most powerful force in your life. Why? Because it's the very thing that will lead you to your destiny. It's the compass that guides you toward calling. And when you begin to speak from that place, when your words begin to align with your purpose, there is nothing and no one that can stand in your way. In the quiet, you find your clarity. You find your boldness. You find the authority that was never about being loud, but about being rooted. That, my friend, is the voice that can change everything. Now here's one of the most profound truths you'll ever come to realize. Yes, people can compliment you. They can appreciate you. They can cheer you on from the sidelines. But only God can complete you. Let that sink in. It might sound simple at first, maybe even something you've heard before. But when that truth finally drops from your head into your heart, it shifts everything. It redefines how you see yourself. It transforms how you show up in relationships, in career, in every corner of your life. Because for too long, we've been conditioned to find our worth in others. In relationships, in validation, in applause, in the titles we earn, the trophies we collect, the image we project. But none of that, none of it can fill the empty places inside, unless we first let God do what only He can do. When you place your identity in people's hands, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. Why? Because people change. People walk away. People project their own pain. And if your sense of worth is tied to their praise or their presence, your peace will always be fragile. But when your identity is rooted in God, when your value is anchored in His unchanging love, then no matter who leaves, no matter what gets taken, no matter what people say, you remain steady. You know you are enough. Not because someone said it, but because He did. Now don't misunderstand me. Relationships matter. We were made for connection, for love, for community. Healthy relationships are gifts from God, beautiful, powerful gifts. But hear me when I say this. Before you can pour into someone else, you've got to be filled by God. Before you can be someone's partner, you have to be whole in Him. Before you give your heart away, let Him have all of it first. Because only He knows you fully. Only He understands the fears you won't say out loud, the dreams you barely admit to yourself, the longings you've buried, and the wounds you still carry. Only He can complete you in the places no one else even sees. And when you let Him do that, when you stop asking people to be what only God can be, you shift. You stop seeking love out of lack. You start offering it from overflow. That's when you become a vessel, not desperate for validation, but secure enough to give love freely without losing yourself in the process. There's a deep peace that settles in your soul when you realize this. You don't need anyone else to complete you. You're already whole in the eyes of the one who made you. So many people live in constant fear of being alone, fear of missing out, fear of never finding the one. It's the kind of fear that creeps in late at night, that whispers in quiet moments, that convinces you that something is wrong with you if you're not in a relationship, not chosen, not pursued. But here's what changes everything. When you're connected to God, truly connected, you begin to realize you were never alone to begin with. You may have felt alone, but you were never abandoned. His presence was always near, closer than your next breath. And His love. It doesn't shift with your performance. It isn't based on how successful you are, how you look, or what you accomplish. It's unconditional, constant, steady, pure. And when you let that kind of love, God's love, fill you completely, something remarkable happens inside of you. Something holy. You stop reaching out of emptiness. You stop chasing validation. You stop trying to find your worth in someone else's eyes. You begin to realize that you no longer have to seek love from places that were never built to hold it. You no longer need to enter relationships just to feel whole. You become secure in who you are, not because of what people say about you, but because of what God has already said about you. And that's the shift. That's the healing. That's where you start drawing boundaries. That's where you stop settling. You stop lowering your standards just to keep someone around. You stop bending yourself into shapes that don't fit, all for the approval of people who never truly saw your worth in the first place. And instead, something new begins to happen. You start attracting the right people. People who don't just tolerate you, they value you. People who aren't drawn to the mask you wore, but to the real you. People who don't try to change your spirit, but celebrate it. Because when you're rooted in God's love, you no longer need to prove yourself to earn a seat at the table. You already belong. When God completes you, you don't have to strive to impress. You don't need to meet the world's shifting standards. You don't have to hustle for love or fight for space in someone's heart. You walk in freedom. You walk in confidence, knowing that you are perfectly loved, fully accepted, and intentionally designed for a purpose greater than anything the world could offer. That's the beauty of God's love. It doesn't just patch up your wounds, it restores you. It doesn't just fill the cracks, it makes you whole. His love reaches into the broken corners of your heart, into the places you thought would never heal, and He breathes life into them again. You see, the enemy wants to trap you. He wants to keep you cycling through insecurity, always performing, always pleasing, always wondering if you're enough. He wants you to believe that love is something you earn, that you have to be perfect to be accepted. But God's truth is the opposite. He loves you as you are, not as you perform. He sees every flaw and still calls you chosen. He knows your failures and still declares you worthy. And if He says you're enough, why chase approval from anyone else? So stop running after people who don't value you. Stop waiting for someone else to affirm what God has already spoken over you. Because the right person, the one God sends, will love you deeply. But they won't be your source of worth. Their love will be a reflection of the love you already carry in God, not a replacement for it. When you are complete in Him, validation is no longer something you need to hunt down. You don't settle for half-hearted affection. You become the kind of person who knows what God's best feels like, and nothing less will satisfy. And here's the beauty of it all: when God fills you, He doesn't just fill you for your sake. He fills you so that you can overflow, so you can pour out love without needing it to be returned, to feel whole. You become a vessel, a light, a source of peace, encouragement, and joy to those around you. You stop living from fear, wondering if you're enough. You start living in freedom, confident in who you are in Christ. You are loved. You are chosen. You are already enough. And when you truly believe that the weight of needing someone else to complete you begins to lift, and in its place, peace. Previously, we talked about what it means to be complete in God, how His love fills the gaps no one else can. Now let's talk about what that completeness unlocks: a life of joy, peace, and purpose that doesn't depend on anyone else to exist. Because when you know you are already whole in Him, something shifts. Deep inside, you begin to carry a kind of peace that no one can disturb. A joy that doesn't get stolen by circumstances. A sense of purpose that doesn't waver, even when life throws detours your way. And that right there is what makes all the difference. Because one of the most freeing, life-changing revelations you'll ever come to understand is this: your happiness does not have to be tied to someone else. Let that settle in your spirit for a moment. Too many people live with the quiet belief that they need someone else to complete them. That true fulfillment comes when you finally find your person, land that relationship, or gain someone's approval. They put their joy on hold, waiting for love to arrive like a missing puzzle piece. But here's the hard truth: no person on this earth can carry the weight of your happiness. Not your partner, not your best friend, not your children, not your parents. Because happiness, real lasting joy, can't be found in someone else's presence. It has to come from within, from a place God designed only He could fill. That's why learning to be happy alone, to be content and whole in solitude, is one of the most powerful, soul-freeing gifts you'll ever give yourself. See, when you rely on others for happiness, you're building your joy on something unstable. People are human. They change. They leave. They disappoint even when they don't mean to. And if your sense of worth is built on the shifting ground of someone else's approval, you'll always be at the mercy of their moods and decisions. But when you root your joy in something deeper, in your relationship with God, in the unshakable truth of who you are, you rise above the volatility of life. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you you're lovable. You already know. You stop waiting for someone to make you feel worthy. You walk in it. That's where strength comes from. You no longer live life anxiously wondering if someone's love will make or break you. You're not waiting to be chosen. You've already been chosen by God. You're not hoping for someone to assign you a purpose. You already carry divine purpose within you. This is the kind of joy that doesn't evaporate when things go wrong. It doesn't fade when someone walks away. It doesn't disappear when life feels quiet or uncertain. It stays. Because it was never built on them. It was built on Him. That's where true freedom lives. It's the freedom to love without clinging, to connect without losing yourself, to give without needing something back to feel whole. It's the freedom to wake up with peace in your heart, even if your phone doesn't buzz. To smile genuinely, even if you're walking solo into a new season. And let's be honest, many of us walk through life silently terrified of being alone. We've been conditioned to see solitude as failure, as something shameful, as a curse. We're told that being alone means being unwanted, abandoned, or unloved. But that's a lie. I want to challenge that thinking today. Because being alone is not the same as being lonely. Being alone is not proof that something's wrong with you. In fact, sometimes being alone is the greatest sign that something right is happening inside of you. Aloneness is where your soul gets quiet enough to heal, where your vision clears, where your spirit has room to breathe, where you finally come back home to yourself. Being alone isn't a punishment, it's an opportunity, a chance to reconnect deeply with your soul, your thoughts, your desires, and most importantly, with God. It's a divine pause, a holy invitation to tune out the noise of the world so you can finally hear the voice within. Not the voice that's been molded by pressure or shaped by expectations, but the one that's been whispering quietly all along. This is who you truly are. When you spend intentional time alone, something sacred begins to unfold. You create space to reflect not just on what's happened to you, but on who you've become because of it. You begin to see yourself clearly, without the filters of public opinion or the masks you've learned to wear, just to keep the peace. In that quiet space, you stop being defined by labels. No longer the achiever, the fixer, the pleaser. No longer boxed in by what others need or want you to be. Instead, you get to ask the questions that actually matter. Who am I really? What do I truly desire out of this life? What is God calling me toward? And what would it look like for me to walk in His purpose fully, boldly, unapologetically, no matter what anyone else thinks? Being alone gives you the sacred stillness to sit with those questions, to wrestle with the answers, to listen not just to your head, but to your heart, to the spirit. And in that stillness, you begin to arrive at a peace that doesn't rely on applause. It's not a peace that comes from meeting someone else's expectations or fulfilling a role. It's deeper, stronger, truer. It's the peace that says, I am enough right here as I am. You begin to understand that you don't need someone else to confirm your worth, because your worth was already established by the one who created you. You were already seen, already known, already called. And in that solitude, something even more powerful happens: healing. When the distractions fall away, when there's no one left to perform for you, finally have space to process what you've been carrying. You can grieve the hurts that still echo inside your heart. You can sit with the memories you've tried to forget. You can confront the shame, the guilt, the disappointment, and release it. In the silence, you can finally forgive yourself. You can let go of the weight that was never yours to carry. You give your soul permission to breathe again. You make room for grace. And slowly, beautifully, your heart begins to mend. You see, God never designed you to be dependent on others for your joy. That was never His intention. He wants you to find joy in Him, in who He's made you to be, in the uniqueness of your voice, your calling, your journey. The world will scream that you need someone else to make you feel complete, to validate your existence, to make you feel loved. But the truth is, You are already complete, already loved, already whole in Him. And when that truth settles in your spirit, it changes everything. You stop reaching for people to fill your gaps. You stop compromising your standards just to avoid feeling alone. You stop tying your happiness to someone else's actions. This doesn't mean you won't desire companionship. It doesn't mean you won't long for love, intimacy, and meaningful connection. But it does mean this: you won't settle. Because now you're not looking for someone to complete you. You know you're already whole. You're not waiting for someone else to define your value, you walk in it. And that kind of confidence, that kind of rooted identity, it draws healthy relationships to you. Like light draws life. You begin attracting people who love from overflow, not need. People who respect your boundaries, honor your voice, and grow beside you, not at the expense of you. These are life-giving connections, built on truth, on respect, on mutual purpose. So stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to be joyful, to be free, to feel worthy. You already are. You don't need a green light from anyone to feel whole. God has already spoken over you. You are chosen. You are mine. You are enough. He's already placed within you everything you need to live with peace, with boldness, and with joy. Earlier, we uncovered the freedom found in knowing you're already whole. Now we arrive at the heart of it all, what it truly means to live from that place, confidently, intentionally, and joyfully. When you learn to be happy alone, something sacred shifts inside you. You no longer need others to complete you, to validate you, or to carry you. You begin to understand that the only one you truly need to rely on is God. And in that reliance, in that deep, unwavering trust in His love and His plan, something unshakable takes root. Because when you rest in His love, truly rest, you find a joy that nothing and no one can steal. Not a breakup, not a disappointment, not a change in season, not even rejection. Why? Because you've found the source. And that source, God's love, never runs dry. You see, learning to be happy alone isn't just about surviving solitude. It's about thriving in it. It's about stepping into the kind of confidence that says, even on my own, I am complete. Even in the quiet, I am filled. Because God has already placed everything you need inside of you. And when you stand tall on your own, when you face the world with nothing but the strength of who you are and who God made you to be, that's when you realize just how powerful you truly are. For far too long, many of us have measured our worth by how much we can give, serve, sacrifice, and do for others. We've been taught that our value is determined by our usefulness, by our ability to show up, to fix, to pour out, until we're empty. But being alone reveals a different truth. Your worth is not in what you do, it's in who you are. You were created intentionally, fearfully, wonderfully. You carry something no one else does because no one else is you. When you begin to understand this, when you stop running from yourself and start getting curious about who you've been created to be, something beautiful unfolds. You stop chasing after relationships to fill your soul. You stop looking for someone else to hand you identity. You begin to focus on your heart, your voice, your calling, not in a self-centered way, but in a sacred way. Because before you can give yourself fully to anyone else, you have to know yourself. You have to sit in your own story, heal what's been hidden, tend to what's been neglected, and reconnect with what's been buried. You begin to ask the deeper questions. What truly brings me joy? What lights me up? What have I been called to do? And when the answers start to rise, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in fire, you feel your purpose reigniting. You start seeing your passions clearly again. The dreams you set aside for others begin to take root. You find yourself not just surviving, but becoming. And here's the key: when you know who you are and what you carry, the opinions of others lose their power. You stop measuring your life by how much you fit in. You stop shrinking to stay accepted. You stop questioning your value based on someone else's ability to recognize it. Instead, you live from a higher place, a God-given place, a place of conviction, clarity, and quiet power. And from that place, you attract the right people. People who respect your boundaries, who value your depth, who are drawn to your authenticity, not your performance. People who don't come to fix you, but to build with you. Relationships no longer become a rescue mission. They become a partnership, a shared journey, not a desperate escape from loneliness. Because now you no longer need someone to complete you. You've already been made whole by the one who designed you. The journey of being happy alone is not about isolation. It's about reclamation. It's about realizing that everything you need to live, to grow, to love, to shine, is already inside you, planted there by God, waiting to be awakened. So take the time, take the space, rediscover who you are. Fall in love with your own presence, heal in your own stillness, and when you do, you'll begin to live the kind of life that isn't defined by approval, applause, or attention. You'll live a life rooted in peace, led by purpose, and filled with the kind of joy that nothing can take away. Because in the end, true happiness doesn't come from being chosen by others. It comes from knowing you were already chosen by God, living fully, living freely, and living as the person you were always meant to be.